Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all having a great day today. So I've been doing landscape photography for about 15 years now. It's been a long time, and I get a lot of questions all the time about how do I make my images look a little bit like film. So I thought I'd make a video about the reasons why I do it and also how I do it. So this is that video. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about the why. Why would you take your really colorful, really detailed and sharp digital image and make it look like film? And of course, I cannot tell you why you would do that, but I can tell you why I am doing that. So as I said, I've been shooting landscape photography for about 15 years now. And the first years were, like, for me at least, normal photography, normal landscapes, colorful, sharp, detailed. But I find that in the past maybe 7 or 8 years, my photography shifted to a more minimal, intimate type of photography. And I think right now I don't want my images to be too clinical, too detailed, and I don't want them to show everything to the viewer. Rather than that, I prefer my images to be mysterious and a little bit timeless. I want to hide the details instead of show details. So, of course, there are many ways to do that, and using black and white is my first choice, because of course black and white is timeless. And also I find that using these techniques to make the images look like film a little bit really helps making the images more mysterious. And that kind of suits my type of photography. So these are the reasons why I do it. Now let's jump into Lightroom and see how I do it. Alright, here we are inside my Lightroom catalog. I have 3 images that I want to check with you guys together today. And all these 3 images were shot during my recent trip to Winter Hokkaido. I do have, I think, 5 vlogs from the trip on my channel, so I'm going to put a link to the whole playlist in the description below. So let's start with the first image here. And of course, this is the before and this is the after. This is a really nice tree that we found in the countryside in BA, out in Hokkaido. It's a really nice tree, and it helps me talk to you about the first thing that you need to do to make your images look a little bit more like film, which is, of course, try and choose conditions that suit film photography. So, for example, in this particular scene here, as you can see, it's already really minimal. The snow was falling and it kind of looks like film already. So you don't have any super sharp detail in the image, not so many small details apart from the branches in the tree that we're gonna fix a little bit later. So that's the first thing, choose the right conditions basically. And I did a little bit of editing here. I'm not gonna go through all the editing that I did because I have a video that goes a little bit more in detail about that, so I'm gonna link that in the description below as well. I'm just gonna show you how I do and try and make this a little bit more film-like. The first thing that it's really important, and I do that to all my images when I shoot in black and white. As you can see, I'm editing on a white background, and there is a reason for that. And the reason is when there is something really white in my image, like in this case the snow, I never want the white parts of my images to be 100% white. Why is that? Well, that's because if you shoot film or even if you print on paper, you will never get something which is 100% white or even 100% black. So there is a really easy trick to make sure that your whites are never 100% white and your blacks are never 100% black. If you go here in the curves and you see I have made a kind of an S-curve here to increase the contrast of the image. The only thing that I like to do is I like to grab this point here, which is the top point for the white, and I just bring it down slightly, like 5 points or something like that, to 250. And I do the same with the blacks. I bring them up about 5 points or something like that. And by doing that, I make sure that nothing in the image is completely pure black and nothing in the image is completely pure white. That's a really slight adjustment, but it's really important to achieve this global film look. So that's the first thing. Second thing, let's let's zoom into the tree here. As you can see, the sharpest part of this image, the more detailed part of this image, is of course the branches in the tree. And I want to hide those a little bit. I want to make them less sharp. I already did a little bit of that by increasing the contrast, so the shadows got crunched a little bit, but I think they're still a little bit too detailed for my taste. So one really simple way I can decrease the sharpness in this image is by using the clarity slider here. And of course, you would normally use it by adding positive values. So if you increase the clarity, as you can see, the image gets really, really sharp. Oh my god, that looks horrible. So let me undo that. What I like to do is actually bring this clarity slider a little bit down, ever so slightly, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 minus, let's do minus 10. And as you can see, it doesn't make a huge difference, but I can definitely see less details in these branches in the actual file here on my computer. So this is really important because as much as we love film, film is never going to be as sharp as a digital camera, especially a high resolution camera. So we always want to bring that down a little bit. And lastly, the only other thing that I will do to this image to make it look like film, you guessed it, is adding a little bit of grain. And I'm not talking about noise like digital noise, I'm talking about film grain. So Lightroom, I'm going to show you how to do that in Lightroom. And it's here in the effects after the vignette. You have this grain slider here, and you just bring it up to your taste. I usually don't go too overboard here, but as you can see, as I increase this, the overall style of the images really changes. The whites are not so white anymore. There's some kind of gray in it from the grain, and also the overall images just looks much better to my eyes. So, of course, this is up to taste. To an image like this, which is really minimal, it has lots of whites, I'd probably go a little bit higher than usual, so maybe 70 or 80. Yeah, something like that. And as you can see, it really makes the image look timeless, kind of mysterious, and a little bit more like film. This is the old image. And if you check, of course, the before and after, it's like night and day, right? Look at the difference. On this left side, you see a digital image, and on this right side, you don't know what you're seeing. You don't know if it's a digital image, you don't know if it's a film image. You're never gonna guess when this was shot. All right, image number 2 here. This is a really nice seascape that I shot on the coast in Hokkaido. I really like these kind of layers. I like the sky, the water, the sand, and the snow here. It was really nice. So this is the before, and this is the after. As you saw, I did a little bit of editing on this as well, a little bit more than the previous image. And again, you can see how I edit my images in my tutorials. So again, I'm going to try and do the same things that I just did to the previous image. So I'm going to bring down the clarity, even if this image doesn't have so many details to start with. Then I'm going to make sure that the blacks go not too black and the whites are not too white. So exactly the same thing. And then I want to add grain, and of course I can do that again by using the grain slider here. And that will look fine, as you can see. But I want to show you another way to do the same thing, which I prefer actually, and that's the way I use it. Of course, this way it's free if you have Lightroom, but I like to use a plugin called SilverFX Pro. So in order to use that, I'm going to jump into Photoshop. So I need to export this image. And I want to right click here and do Edit in, Open as Smart Object in Photoshop. I like to export images as smart objects when I work with Photoshop, because I can always go back and edit the raw file if I need to make some extra adjustments. So here we are in Photoshop, and we have our image. In order to use this plugin, I want to duplicate this layer. So I'm going to duplicate this layer by doing Command J on my keyboard. And then I'm going to apply this filter, Nik Collection, SilverFX Pro. This is a paid plugin. Of course, they're not sponsoring this video. but I really like this plugin. I've been using it for I don't know how many years, since version number 1. The main advantage of this plugin over the grain filter in Lightroom is that this program also emulates different types of film stock, which is really important if you want to kind of emulate the film look. So right now this is a black and white conversion that I did myself. I did choose how to make the sky look, how to make the water look, but of course if you ever shot film, you would know that every different type of film has a different feel to it. So for example, I really like Acros, and Acros, it's really contrasty, but also kind of lifts the blacks a little bit compared to, I don't know, T-Max or any other Kodak film that I used in the past. So this plugin really emulates Acros well, and that's one of the reasons why I use it. So of course Silver FX Pro has lots and lots of options which I never use. The only option that I use is this film type, and if you go to this drop down here, you can choose which film stock to emulate. And of course you can see as I hover on it, it changes the preview of my image, and you can see you get really different results depending on the film that you choose. So as I said, my favorite is Acros, so I'm going to choose Acros, and you can see the before and after. It gets a little bit more contrasty, it hides a little bit more of details, and the overall look is a little more film-like, so to speak. So I kind of leave it as it is. The only thing that I like to change usually is the amount of grain. So as you can see here, 100%. Acros grain is kind of fine grain, so you don't see it too much. It's kind of subtle, but I like to make the image a little bit more grainy and gritty. So what I like to do is just go here on the grain and lower it down to, I don't know, maybe 350 instead of 450. And as you can see, it makes a really huge difference. Let me zoom back. Okay, and then you just apply your effect, and this is going to apply this black and white film conversion and the grain to this new layer as a smart object. And of course you can see the before and after. If you zoom in, you can see your image looks really nice and film-like. Of course I will go in and get rid of some of these distracting elements, but that's a topic for another video, so I'm not going to touch that today. Alright, image number 3. I really like this image, and you might not agree with me. I'm perfectly aware of that. We were driving along the road to a shooting location that we had planned for the day, and I saw these mountain tops kind of disappearing in the snow here, because it was snowing a lot and then it was stopping, and you get some fog and you get really lots of different conditions. And I saw these treetops in the mountain getting kind of hidden from the fog and from the snow. So I shot this from the car, handheld, at 400mm, as you can see here. And by looking at it like this, it doesn't look like a great image, at least to most of the people. But for me, this is really what film photography, so to speak, and minimalist photography is all about. So I did a conversion here, and as you can see, it looks so much better in black and white, because you can see all these layers of fog, the different tones of black and gray up to the white. I really like how simple this image is and how suggestive this image is, especially this part. Look at this part. I kind of love these details that you barely can see in the trees. And of course it's not the sharpest of all images. It's shot handheld, but that's not the matter. The matter is how suggestive this image is, at least for me. I think it's one of my favorite images from this trip to Hokkaido, which is pretty weird because it could have been shot everywhere. All right, so again, the edit is really simple on this one, so I'm not going to go through all of it. I'm just going to do what I did to the other two images. I'm going to lower down my clarity, -10. And then I want to bring down my whites as usual and bring up my blacks. So nothing is crushed and nothing is too white in the frame. Another two things that we can do to add to this film look in this particular image is the first one, whenever you have fog or mist in your image, most of the people usually use this dehaze slider to cut through the fog and the mist. So if you put this up, you can see, you start to see the mountains and the trees behind, which is fine. It's actually a nice effect. But as you know, I think I already made a video about the dehaze and how I use it on my channel. I like to use the dehaze in the total opposite direction. So I like to bring it down to hide even more and to make everything more mysterious. So as you can see, as I bring it down, it's like making the fog stronger, which creates more separation between the foreground here, the midground, and the background there. So of course I don't want to go over the top, because if I go over the top, basically everything disappears, and we don't want to do that. But I think something like -10 in this particular image really helps. It's a really subtle editing, but when you put all these things together, they really make a huge difference. So that's one thing. And another thing that you might want to add to this image, because as you can see, the top is really bright, it's the brightest part of the image, and usually your eyes go to the brightest part of your image, so you don't want your eyes to really go up here. You kind of want to focus on this part when you get all the gradations of gray. So one way to focus the attention of the viewer here is to make this part a little bit darker, and it's really easy. You can do that in Lightroom here with the vignetting, and you just bring it down ever so slightly, maybe -10 or something, and you can always make the feather higher, something like 80. Again, it's really subtle, but it makes a huge difference for me. Now my eyes go here instead of going to the top part. So let's add our grain again and export this as a smart object in Photoshop. Let's duplicate the layer again and go to the filters, Nik Collection, Silver FX Pro. Okay, so again, I can go back to my favorite Acros, and sometimes you will find that by using Silver FX Pro, sometimes you like the effect, sometimes the effect is a little bit too strong. So in this case, if I turn this on and off, it's not too bad. But let's say I don't like this effect too much. I only want the grain, because the grain in Silver FX is really organic, really good. So I want to keep the grain, but I don't want this film simulation to be applied. It's really easy. Instead of choosing Acros, I just choose neutral here, which basically keeps the image as it is when I imported it, and I just add the grain. So for this particular image, I think something like 300 would be perfect. Let's check at 100%. Yeah, it really makes a huge difference. And you can see this is the before and this is the after. All the details, all the small parts that you don't like just disappear. And the fog, of course, really helps, but the grain is also really important. So I'll just apply that. And there you have it. Now, the only other thing that I might want to do here, just to show you, is, as I said, I want the people to focus here instead of on the top here. So maybe I want to make this a little bit darker than it is, and it's really easy. I can just add an adjustment layer for exposure, and then I bring down this to, I don't know, -1 stop. Then I press G on my keyboard to select the gradient tool, and I make sure it's a gradient from white to black, so from visible to invisible. And then I hold my shift key and just drag mouse like that. And this is going to apply this adjustment layer only to the top part of the image. So you can see a before after. Again, it's really, really subtle, but in this case, I think it's worth it. Alright, so these are all the techniques that I use to make my digital images look a little bit more like film. Hopefully you can use these techniques in your own photography and tweak them as you wish. If you did find this video useful, remember to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already. And thank you so much for watching. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.